I never imagined that the happiest day of my son's life would turn into one of the most humiliating days of mine. The sun was shining bright over the vineyard where the wedding was held, a place I had fully paid for. I remember standing near the aisle, holding a small velvet box with the family heirloom ring I wanted to gift my son and his bride. Everything looked perfect, the music, the guests, the laughter, until she walked up to me. "What are you doing here?" my son's fiancée Victoria asked, her voice dripping with disgust. I blinked, confused. "I'm here for my son's wedding," I said with a gentle smile, thinking she was joking. But she wasn't. Her lips tightened. "We are a different class than you, Mr. Carter. You don't belong here. I told Daniel that, but he doesn't listen." For a moment, I couldn't process her words. The laughter from the guests suddenly felt miles away. She continued, "Please, just leave before you embarrass us. My family is already uncomfortable enough." My chest tightened. I turned to look for my son, Daniel, but he was across the yard, smiling at guests, oblivious to what was happening. Everyone looked so elegant, her family in designer suits, whispering and judging. I felt like a shadow in my own son's wedding. "Victoria," I said softly, "I raised Daniel alone. Everything you see here, I paid for. This day is as much mine as his." She smirked. "Then consider it your donation. Now please, leave." My hands trembled, but I refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. I simply nodded, looked at her one last time, and whispered, "Good luck." I walked back to my car, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses fading behind me. Once I got in, I sat for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. My heart ached, not because of her insult, but because Daniel hadn't defended me. I turned on the engine, took a deep breath, and said to myself, "All right then." Then I called my banker. "Mr. Ross," I said calmly, "freeze all the wedding accounts and cancel every pending payment. Venue, catering, photographer, everything, effective immediately." There was silence on the line, then a cautious reply. "All of them, sir?" "All of them," I said firmly. "Let them figure out what different class really means." As I drove away, I caught one last glimpse of the vineyard in my rearview mirror. They had no idea what was coming.
The next morning, I woke up to a flood of missed calls. My phone buzzed nonstop. Daniel, the wedding planner, even Victoria's mother. I ignored them all. I poured myself a cup of coffee, sat on the porch, and watched the sunrise. The air felt different, calm, cleansing. For years, I had done everything to make sure my son had the best life possible. After his mother passed away, I worked double shifts, skipped vacations, and poured every ounce of my savings into his future. College tuition, his first car, even that expensive engagement ring he gave Victoria. All paid for by me. And yet, standing there yesterday, I realized how little he valued any of it. My thoughts were interrupted by the phone ringing again. This time, I answered. "Dad, what the hell did you do?" Daniel's voice was sharp, panicked. I took a slow sip of coffee. "Good morning to you too, son." "The venue canceled on us this morning. The photographer's gone. The caterer said the payment bounced. Victoria's family is furious. They're threatening to sue," he shouted. "Is this your doing?" I leaned back in my chair. I suppose they found out what it's like when someone from a different class stops paying the bills. For a moment, there was silence. Then he said, "Dad, this isn't funny. You're ruining my marriage." I sighed. "No, son. Your fiancée ruined your wedding when she kicked your father out of it." There was a pause. I could hear Victoria yelling in the background. "Tell him to fix it," she screamed. Daniel's voice lowered. "Dad, please. Just please don't do this. I love her." "If she loved you," I said quietly, "she wouldn't have humiliated your family. Love isn't built on money or class, Daniel. It's built on respect. I hung up before he could respond. I didn't want to hear excuses. That night, I got a message from one of my old friends who attended the wedding. It read, "Heard what happened. Half the vendors packed up before the ceremony even started. Victoria's family had to pay double to keep the event running." I smiled slightly. Good, I thought. Actions have consequences. Over the next few weeks, Daniel didn't call. Neither did Victoria. I figured they needed time. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. One evening, as I was reviewing some investment reports, I received a knock at my door. When I opened it, Daniel stood there, disheveled, holding a small overnight bag. His eyes were tired. "Dad, can I come in?" I nodded silently and motioned for him to sit. He looked around my modest living room, the same house he grew up in. "She left me," he said finally. "Her family said I was a financial embarrassment. She couldn't stand the shame." I said nothing. I let him talk. "You were right," he whispered. "She never cared about me. Just the lifestyle she thought she was marrying into." His voice broke. "And you treated me like dirt." He put his head in his hands, shaking. I placed a hand on his shoulder. "Son, I never cared about your wedding or the money. I cared about you seeing the truth." He nodded slowly. "I do now." We sat in silence for a while, the sound of crickets filling the air. Then I said, "Daniel, you'll rebuild, but this time, do it with your own hands. And when you meet someone next, make sure she loves you, not your wallet." He looked up at me, eyes wet. "I will, Dad. I promise." I thought that would be the end of it, but it wasn't, because 3 weeks later, Victoria showed up at my office. She looked different, worn down, desperate. "Mr. Carter, I need your help." I raised an eyebrow. "Help? From someone from a different class?" She winced. "I know what I said was wrong, but please, I don't have anyone else." I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. "What exactly do you want from me?" Her eyes filled with tears. "My family business is collapsing. The debts are piling up. I thought maybe you could invest." I stared at her for a long time, trying to read her expression. Was it genuine remorse or another manipulation? "You insulted me, humiliated me, and kicked me out of my son's wedding," I said calmly. "Now you want me to save you." "Please," she whispered. "I've lost everything." I stood up and walked to the window, watching the city skyline. "Maybe now," I said quietly, "you'll understand what being in a different class really feels like." She looked up at me, her lips trembling. "So, is that a no?" I turned back to her and gave a cold smile. "That's not a no. That's a lesson." Her face fell. Without another word, she turned and left my office. As the door closed, I felt no anger, only peace. Life has a way of balancing things out. I didn't need revenge. Karma did the job for me. But deep down, I had a feeling this wasn't the last I'd hear from her, because people like Victoria, they don't give up easily. They come back, desperate and dangerous.
A week passed since Victoria came begging for help, but something about that meeting didn't sit right with me. The desperation in her eyes wasn't just fear, it was calculation. She wasn't done yet. I knew that look. I'd seen it in people who'd lost control but still thought they could manipulate their way back. I thought I'd never hear from her again, but one evening, as I pulled into my driveway, I noticed a black car parked across the street. The headlights were off, but I could feel someone watching. I ignored it and went inside, locking the door behind me. The next morning, my neighbor, Mrs. Green, mentioned seeing a fancy-looking lady standing near my gate around midnight. My gut tightened. I knew it was her.
A few days later, Daniel came by with groceries. He was trying to rebuild his life, working part-time and slowly mending our relationship. But as he was leaving, he handed me an envelope. "This came to my apartment," he said. "No return address." I opened it carefully. Inside was a photo of me sitting in my office, taken from outside through the glass window. On the back, a note in neat handwriting. "You ruined my life, now I'll ruin yours." Daniel looked pale. "Dad, who would—" "Victoria," I interrupted, my voice low. "It's her." He clenched his fists. "I'll call the police." I shook my head. "No, she's not stupid. She won't do anything traceable. This is a mind game." That night, I sat in my study thinking back on everything. I wasn't angry, just disappointed. I had given her a chance to move on with dignity. Instead, she chose vengeance. But if it was a war she wanted, she'd learn she was up against someone far more patient and prepared. The next week, strange things started happening. A banker I'd known for years called asking why I had supposedly requested large fund transfers. Of course, I hadn't. Someone had forged my signature. Then one of my business associates told me he received an email from me warning him not to invest in my projects. Someone was sabotaging me. Slowly, cleverly, invisibly. I knew exactly who. I decided to play along. I let the chaos build, let her think she was winning. I even pretended to be worried when Daniel asked about the bank issues. "It's probably just a mistake," I'd say. But behind the scenes, I was documenting everything. Every suspicious email, every false transaction, every fake message. I hired a cybersecurity expert, a quiet, brilliant young woman named Clara, who used to work for the FBI. Within 2 days, she called me. "Mr. Carter, I think I know who's behind it." "Victoria?" I asked. "Worse," she said. "Someone she's working with, a man named Ryan Pierce. He's her ex-fiancé. They're using his company servers to route the attacks." I couldn't help but smile. That's all I needed to know. By now, my patience had turned into strategy. I didn't want to go to the police yet. I wanted her to think she still had the upper hand. Because when her fall came, I wanted it to be public, permanent, and poetic. A few nights later, I invited Daniel over for dinner. As we ate, I looked at him carefully. He seemed calmer now, stronger. "Dad, Victoria's been posting things about you online. She's saying you stole from her family." I nodded. "Let her talk. The truth will find its way out." He frowned. "You're being too calm. What if this ruins your reputation?" I smiled faintly. "Son, sometimes silence is the loudest answer. But don't worry, I'm not staying silent forever." After he left, I opened my laptop and pulled up the files Clara had sent me, detailed logs of every illegal action Victoria and her partner had taken. My plan was simple. Let her dig her own grave, and when she was deep enough, pull the ground right out from under her. The next week, Victoria tried one last desperate move. She showed up at my company's board meeting uninvited. Wearing her expensive suit and fake confidence, she stormed in waving a folder of fake evidence claiming I had defrauded clients. The boardroom went silent. I stood up slowly. "Victoria, you're trespassing." She snapped. "I'm exposing you. You think you can destroy people's lives and walk away?" I turned to the board members. "Ladies and gentlemen, please check your inboxes." At that exact moment, Clara sent them the full digital report, timestamps, server traces, messages between Victoria and Ryan plotting to hack my company. The room filled with gasps. Victoria's face drained of color. "What is this?" she whispered. I stepped closer. "That's what happens when you mess with someone who built everything the hard way. You wanted to play dirty? You lose." Security escorted her out as she screamed my name in rage. The moment she disappeared down the hallway, I finally exhaled. Justice wasn't loud. It was quiet, precise, and deeply satisfying. But as I looked out the boardroom window that evening,
watching the sunset paint the sky orange. I couldn't shake one feeling. This wasn't truly over. Because people like Victoria don't stop after losing once. They regroup. They return. And next time, she might not come alone. It had been almost 2 months since the boardroom incident, and for a while, life finally felt normal again. Daniel had started a new job in another city, I was back to running my company in peace, and even the news about Victoria's scandal had died down. I thought maybe, just maybe, she had finally learned her lesson. But I was wrong. One cold Thursday evening, I returned home after a long day of meetings. As I parked my car, I noticed my front door slightly open. My pulse quickened. I always locked it before leaving. Slowly, I pushed the door open. The living room light was on. And there she was, Victoria, sitting on my couch like she owned the place. Her once perfect hair was messy, her eyes sharp and cold. "Hello, Mr. Carter," she said, her voice calm but icy. "Miss me?" I stood there, my jaw tight. "You broke into my house." She smirked. "Let's not be dramatic. I just needed to talk, and you weren't taking my calls." "You mean the ones you sent from blocked numbers?" I asked dryly. She ignored that and leaned forward. "You humiliated me. You took everything from me. My reputation, my career, my money." "No, Victoria," I said slowly. "You did that yourself. I just made sure the truth came out." She tilted her head, her lips curving into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Truth? You think people care about truth? They care about stories, and I'm going to give them one they'll never forget." "Get out," I said quietly, but she didn't move. Instead, she pulled out her phone, showing me a video. My breath caught for a second. It was footage of Daniel at a bar, talking to a woman. "Nice, isn't it?" she said softly. "Imagine what his new job would think if they saw their employee drunk flirting with a married coworker." I glared at her. "You're pathetic." "Maybe," she said, standing up, "but I'm desperate, and desperate people are dangerous. So here's my deal. You pay me $500,000 and I disappear. No one gets hurt." I chuckled darkly. "Blackmail? That's your big comeback?" She stepped closer, eyes blazing. "Don't underestimate me, Mr. Carter. You think you've won, but I know things about your company, your deals, your family. I've done my homework this time." I met her gaze, unwavering. "You're bluffing." She smiled. "Try me." Then she walked out, heels clicking against the wooden floor, leaving the faint scent of expensive perfume and poison in the air. I locked the door behind her, my mind racing. I didn't feel fear. I felt something sharper. Determination. The next morning, I met Clara, my cybersecurity expert, at my office. "She's back," I told her. Clara sighed. I figured. "I've seen activity on your systems again. Someone's probing your accounts, testing passwords, sending fake invoices." "Can you trace it?" I asked. "I already did," she said, sliding a file across the table. "She's working with 2 people now, a man named Ryan and another hacker known only as Ghostline. This one's not just personal anymore, it's professional. They're trying to take your company down." I looked at her steadily. "Then it's time we go on offense." That night I called Daniel. He sounded tired. "Dad, I thought this was over." So did I said, "but Victoria's not done. She's blackmailing me now, and she's dragging you into it too." He groaned. "Unbelievable. What do you want me to do?" "Nothing," I said. "You stay out of it. I'll handle this." But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. Victoria was cunning, and this time she had help. The next few days were tense. Anonymous emails, strange calls, even a car following me for 2 blocks, all subtle, all threatening. But I stayed calm, letting Clara monitor everything from behind the scenes. Then one evening she called me, her voice urgent. "Mr. Carter, you need to see this. They're planning something big tonight." I drove straight to the office. On her screen were real-time logs showing someone accessing my company's servers remotely, using stolen credentials. "They're copying data," Clara said. "If they get through, They'll have everything: client lists, financials, personal details. Can you stop them? I asked. She nodded. Yes, but if I block them now, they'll know we're onto them. Let's trap them instead. Do it, I said. She typed rapidly, setting up a digital decoy, a fake database designed to trace whoever accessed it. Within minutes, a signal pinged on the map. Got them, Clara said, smiling faintly. Location: an abandoned office downtown. I grabbed my coat, sent it to the police anonymously, let them handle it. 2 hours later, I got the call. Police had raided the place. Ryan was arrested on the spot. The hacker, Ghostline, escaped. And Victoria, she was gone. But not long. The next morning, as I stepped outside to get the newspaper, I found an envelope on my doorstep. Inside was a single photograph: Victoria standing in front of my company building at night, smiling, holding a lighter. On the back, one line written in red ink: "You started this. I'll finish it." I stared at it for a long time, the morning air cold against my skin. This wasn't over. Not even close. The photo of Victoria standing outside my company building haunted me for days. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see that cold smile and the lighter in her hand. Clara had increased security around my offices, installed surveillance systems, and encrypted every file we had. But I knew Victoria wasn't the kind of woman to give up. She'd been humiliated, exposed, and cornered, and when people like her have nothing left to lose, that's when they become most dangerous. 3 nights later, I was sitting in my study, going over some paperwork, when the power flickered. Then it went out completely. The whole neighborhood plunged into darkness. I grabbed the flashlight and looked out the window. Everything was silent, too silent. Then, in the distance, I saw it, the faint glow of flames. My heart dropped. It was coming from the direction of my company headquarters. I didn't think. I just ran. When I reached the main street, I could already hear sirens. The building was on fire. Thick black smoke billowed into the night sky as firefighters tried to control the blaze. I pushed past the crowd, shouting for answers. "Was anyone inside?" I asked. One of the officers recognized me. "We think it started in the storage wing. No casualties reported yet. But, sir, it looks intentional." Intentional. My stomach twisted. I knew exactly who was behind it. As I stood there, staring at the flames consuming years of my work, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You took everything from me. Now you'll watch it all burn. Victoria." It took firefighters hours to contain the fire. The damage was catastrophic, millions lost. But I wasn't broken. I was furious. The next morning, Clara came to my house. She looked exhausted, holding her laptop. "Mr. Carter, I traced the message. She sent it from a burner phone near the docks." "Can you find where she's staying?" I asked. She nodded. "I can try, but she's covering her tracks better than before." I clenched my fists. "Then we'll make her come to us." Over the next few days, I set the stage. I leaked fake information online, news that my company was reopening, that new investors were joining, that a massive insurance payout was on its way. It was bait, and I knew Victoria wouldn't be able to resist. Sure enough, 3 days later, Clara called. "She took it," she said. "She's been tracking your fake accounts. She thinks you've got money stashed in an offshore fund." "Perfect," I said. "Let's end this." That evening, we met at my office's temporary setup, a small building outside the city. I left a few important files on the desk, left the lights on, and waited. Around midnight, a silent alarm triggered. Someone had broken in. I watched from the security room, the monitors flickering. There she was, Victoria, dressed in black, moving like a ghost through the hallway. She didn't look like the glamorous woman I once met. She looked like someone who'd lost everything and was holding on to pure rage. She reached the office, started searching through drawers, and found the fake documents I'd planted. I waited until she picked them up, then stepped into the room. "Looking for something?" She froze, her face pale under the dim light. "You," she hissed, "you think you can trap me?" "I don't need to trap you, Victoria. You walked in yourself." She laughed, bitter and wild.
"You ruined my life. I loved Daniel, and you turned him against me." "You ruined yourself," I said calmly. "I gave you chances. Every one of them you destroyed." She took a step closer, eyes blazing. "You think you're better than me because you have money, connections, power? I'll show you how it feels to lose everything." I saw something glint in her hand, a lighter. My blood ran cold. "Don't do this," I said quietly. "You'll only make it worse." "It's already worse," she screamed, flicking the lighter. Flames erupted across the papers she'd thrown on the floor. Within seconds, the fire spread to the curtains. Clara burst in from behind, holding a fire extinguisher. "Drop it!" she shouted. But Victoria only laughed. I grabbed Clara and pulled her back as smoke filled the room. "She's lost it," Clara coughed. The fire alarms went off, sprinklers raining down, but the flames were too strong. We had no choice but to run. Outside, the fire trucks arrived again. As I looked back, the small building was engulfed in orange light. I couldn't see Victoria anymore, just smoke. "Do you think she made it out?" Clara asked quietly. I didn't answer. A part of me didn't want to know. The next morning, investigators combed through the wreckage. They found traces of accelerant, a burned lighter, and a woman's ring, but no body. Victoria was gone. Missing. Maybe dead. Maybe not. I stood in front of the ashes, my heart heavy, but strangely calm. "It's over," Clara said. I nodded slowly. Maybe. But deep inside, I knew better. People like Victoria don't just disappear. They hide, they wait, and they plan their return. And somehow, I knew this wasn't the end. Not yet.
It had been 6 months since the fire. The investigation was closed, the insurance claims settled, and everyone had moved on. Everyone except me. Even though the police report said Victoria's body was likely destroyed in the fire, I didn't believe it. I couldn't. Every instinct in me whispered she was still out there. Some nights I'd wake up from half sleep, certain I'd heard her voice. Other nights I'd find small things moved around my office, too subtle to be random. Clara said it was paranoia, trauma. Maybe she was right. Maybe I just couldn't let it go. But then, one afternoon, I got proof. I was in my office when Daniel called. "Dad, you're not going to believe this," he said, his voice shaking. "I just saw her." I froze. "Who?" "Victoria," he whispered. "She's alive." He said he'd been walking out of a restaurant downtown when he saw a woman who looked exactly like her, same face, same eyes, but with black hair and a new name. She was with a man in a gray suit, laughing like she didn't have a care in the world. "Are you sure?" I asked quietly. "Positive. I called her name. She looked right at me, then got in a car and drove off." That night I couldn't sleep. If she'd changed her identity, it meant one thing. She was rebuilding, starting over. And if I knew Victoria, she wasn't doing it for peace. She was doing it for revenge. The next morning, Clara came by. I told her everything. "If she's alive, we'll find her," Clara said, determination in her eyes. Within hours, she tracked a digital footprint, a new company registered under the name Veronica Hale. Same initials, same writing style, same pattern of transactions, but the shocking part, the company's focus was financial rehabilitation and corporate consulting. In other words, she was using her experience ruining my company to sell herself as an expert to others. "Unbelievable," Clara had muttered. "She's turning her crimes into a business model." I stared at the screen. She's not just rebuilding. She's rewriting the story. We decided to dig deeper, quietly. For weeks, Clara monitored Veronica's accounts, following small digital breadcrumbs. But one evening, she looked pale as she entered my office. "Mr. Carter, she knows." "Knows what?" "That we're watching her. She sent a message through an encrypted channel, just one line." She handed me the paper. It read, You can chase ghosts, but I live in your shadow. I felt a chill run down my spine. She's taunting us. Worse, she's planning something. 2 days later, something strange happened. One of my senior investors pulled out of a major deal last minute, citing rumors about my company's stability. Another client said he'd received an anonymous email claiming I was under investigation for fraud. I knew the pattern. This was Victoria style. Quiet chaos. Whispers that destroy reputations faster than fire ever could. I tried to warn Daniel to stay away, but he was already involved. "Dad, I can help," he insisted. "I know how she thinks now." I shook my head. "You think you know, but she's changed. She's colder now, smarter. So are we," he said firmly. I saw in his eyes the same determination I had years ago, and for a moment I felt something close to pride, mixed with dread. A week later, I received a letter. Handwritten, elegant, and sealed in black wax. It wasn't mailed, it had been slipped under my office door. I opened it slowly. Inside, one line. "We meet soon. Be ready to lose everything twice." No signature, but I didn't need one. The next morning, I found my office window cracked open from the inside. On my desk sat a single red rose, fresh and perfectly placed. My security cameras showed nothing. No entry, no trace. Just like a ghost. I called Clara immediately. "She's here," I said. "Not online, not from a distance. She's back, physically." Clara began enhancing the footage, but even she couldn't find how anyone got in. "It's impossible," she said. "It's like she walked through walls." I exhaled slowly. That's exactly what she wants us to think. That night, I drove out to the old vineyard, the same place where it all began, Daniel's wedding. The place I hadn't visited since that disastrous day. As I stepped onto the property, the memories came flooding back. The music, the laughter, the humiliation. And then I saw it. In the distance, near the old gazebo. A faint light flickered. I walked closer, heart pounding. There, on the wooden table, sat another rose and a small note. "Welcome back to where you ended me." I looked around, scanning the shadows. The air felt heavy, silent. And then I heard a whisper behind me. "Hello again, Mr. Carter." I spun around, but she was already gone. Only her perfume lingered in the cold night air.
After that night at the vineyard, sleep became a luxury. Every sound, every flicker of light made me feel like she was watching again. Clara stayed on high alert, monitoring every server, every account tied to my name. Daniel tried to act strong, but I could see the tension in his eyes. He was scared, not for himself, but for me. And maybe that's what hurt the most, realizing that my son was now living under the same shadow I once cast. "We can't wait for her next move," Clara said one morning, her tone sharp. "She's too far ahead. We have to make her think she's winning." I looked up from my desk. "You mean bait her?" "Exactly," she replied. "We plant a story, something she can't resist." That afternoon, we began building the trap. A fake investment proposal, supposedly transferring millions from my company into a hidden overseas account. We made it look sloppy on purpose, like I was trying to cover something up. It was a gamble, but one that could draw her out if she was still watching. 4 days later, Clara called me into her office. "She took the bait," she said, eyes wide.
Our tracker shows activity from her fake company servers. She downloaded the documents and tried to trace the source. Where? New York, Midtown. My pulse quickened. So she's in the city. Clara nodded. We can confirm if we get one more ping. That night, Daniel joined us. If she's nearby, I want to see her. I want to end this, he said. I hesitated. He was my son. I couldn't bear to put him in danger again. But he was right. It was time to end this. We set up surveillance at the location of the next staged transaction, a luxury office downtown. Everything was ready. Cameras hidden, security on standby. If she came, we'd have her on record for fraud and identity theft. But nothing could have prepared me for what really happened. At 9:47 p.m., the door opened, the lights flickered, and she walked in. Victoria, or Veronica, whatever she called herself now, looked different, but unmistakable. Black hair, sleek suit, cold confidence. She walked straight to the desk, scanned the documents, and smiled faintly. "You always did underestimate me, Mr. Carter," she whispered. Then she looked right at the hidden camera. "Still trying to outsmart a ghost?" The feed went dark instantly. Clara gasped. She disabled the network. She knew about the cameras. I ran out the door, racing to the surveillance building, but by the time I got there, she was gone. No car, no trace, just one thing left behind on the table, a single USB drive labeled "The End." Clara plugged it into a secure, offline computer. Inside was a video file. We played it together. It was footage from years ago. Daniel's wedding day, the moment she told me to get out, the humiliation, the anger. But the clip didn't end there. It continued, showing her watching me from a distance afterward, tears in her eyes. "You ruined my life," she said, recorded. "Now I'll ruin yours piece by piece until you understand what it means to lose everything you built." The screen went black. Daniel clenched his fists. "She's not done, Dad. She's still planning something." "I know," I whispered, "but now we know where she'll strike next. Because in the metadata of that video, hidden deep in the code, Clara found GPS coordinates, an address just outside the city, a warehouse, abandoned for years. The perfect hiding place. It's a message," Clara said. "She wants you to come." I stared at the address on the screen. Every instinct told me it was a trap. But this time, I wasn't the same broken man she left at that wedding. I was ready for her. "Then that's exactly where I'll go," I said quietly. "It ends where she wants it to, so she'll never expect what's waiting for her." That night, as I prepared to leave, Daniel tried to stop me. "Dad, don't go alone." "I have to," I said. "If she sees you, she'll vanish again. This is between me and her." He looked down, silent for a moment, then nodded. "Then promise me you'll come back." I forced a small smile. "I intend to." I drove into the night, the road ahead empty, the city lights fading behind me. My phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. I opened it. One sentence glowed on the screen. "Bring your past, Mr. Carter. I'll bring your truth." As I reached the edge of the abandoned district, the warehouse came into view. Broken windows, silent walls, a faint light glowing from inside. I turned off the engine, stepped out, and walked toward the door. The air felt heavy, electric. I reached for the handle and froze. From inside, I heard her voice, calm and haunting. "You finally came." The door creaked as I stepped inside, my flashlight cutting through the thick darkness. Dust floated in the air like forgotten ghosts. The faint light I'd seen from outside flickered from a single lantern placed in the middle of the room. Beside it, a chair, And sitting on that chair? Victoria. She looked calm, composed, like she'd been waiting forever. "You took long enough," she said softly. I didn't answer. My heartbeat echoed louder than my footsteps. "Why, Victoria?" I asked. "After everything, why keep coming after me?" She smiled faintly, tilting her head. "Because you took everything from me. My career, my reputation, my peace. You humiliated me in front of everyone at your son's wedding, and then burned my life down to save your pride." "You lied," I shot back. "You tried to manipulate my son, destroy my company. I exposed you because you deserved it." Her smile faded, and her eyes turned cold. "Maybe I did. But I learned something from you, Mr. Carter. Power isn't about the truth. It's about who tells the story first." She stood up slowly, walking toward me. The floorboards groaned beneath her heels. "Do you know what's funny? You still think you're the hero of this story." "And what are you then?" I asked quietly. "The villain?" She smirked. "I'm the consequence." Before I could reply, she pressed a small remote in her hand. Instantly, lights flickered on across the warehouse, revealing screens mounted on the walls, all displaying files, bank records, personal emails. My emails. My accounts. "You weren't the only one setting traps," she said. "While you thought you were baiting me, I was already inside your systems." "You hacked me," I whispered. She shrugged. "It's not hard when you already know the person's every weakness." But then she hesitated, just for a moment, and that hesitation was all I needed. "You made one mistake, Victoria," I said, stepping closer. "You underestimated Clara." At that exact second, the screens around us began to glitch. Lines of code flashed rapidly, and then one by one they went black. "What's happening?" she hissed. I smiled faintly. "While you were inside my system, Clara was inside yours. Everything you built, your fake companies, your accounts, your identity, it's all gone." Her eyes widened as her phone buzzed. She looked down at the screen, watching in horror as every account was wiped clean. "No," she whispered, "you can't." But before she could finish, police sirens wailed in the distance. Clara's voice came through my earpiece. "We've got the trace. She's done, Mr. Carter. They're coming." Victoria looked at me with a mix of fury and disbelief. You turned me into this," she said bitterly. "You built the monster, and now you want to destroy it." I took a deep breath. "No, Victoria. You destroyed yourself. I just stopped you from taking anyone else down with you." Tears welled up in her eyes for a fleeting second, and for a moment I saw the woman she used to be, the one who once dreamed of success, not vengeance. "Maybe you're right," she said quietly, "but you'll never forget me." Then she dropped the remote, stepped back, and smiled one last time as the police burst through the doors. They shouted for her to freeze, but she didn't move. She simply raised her hands, her eyes never leaving mine. "Goodbye, Mr. Carter." They took her away, handcuffed, but still defiant. Even as the car drove off, I knew she was smiling somewhere in that darkness, satisfied that she'd carved her mark into my life forever. Later that night, I stood by the river, the city lights shimmering on the water. Daniel called. "Is it over?" he asked. I paused for a long moment, watching the moon's reflection ripple. "Yes," I said finally. "It's over." But deep down, I knew that wasn't entirely true. Some battles don't end when the enemy falls. They end when the memories fade. And some memories never do. As I turned to leave, the wind carried a faint whisper, almost like her voice. "You'll never forget me." I looked back at the empty street and whispered, maybe that's the point. And for the first time in years, I felt free. The end.